Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon, the podcast where we dive deep into all things health and wellness to help you find health and healing inside and out for now and forever. Hello and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon. Welcome back to the podcast here where we talk all things holistic health and wellness. Today's topic is liver detox pathway support, and we'll just kind of categorize this too as like drainage support. And I know we've mentioned this on previous episodes before. If you follow any of our other social media content, you know how much we talk about this. And so today we're going to go a deep dive into what are liver detox pathways, how do we support them, why do we need to support them, and why is this so fundamental? Why do we put such a massive emphasis on drainage, on liver detox pathway support, especially when it comes to basically any protocol out there and for maintenance support? I mean, this stuff is so important, just like foundational for all health and wellness. It's one of the biggest things that after we've done, bigger work with clients, we still hugely emphasize just the need to really continue to support liver detox pathways and what this is. And so we're going to dive deep into all of this today. Okay, so let's start with just like what are liver detox pathway? Like, what is this pathway? Like, what is drainage? Like, what does this even mean? Before we dive into like, why is this so important? Because I think if we chat a little bit more about what this is first, then this will make more sense as to why it's so important.
Yeah, definitely. And there's multiple moving parts to this. So I'm just going to go over them briefly. And then, if you want to dive in more, we can talk about each of them. So the colon is like a big part of this here. If you're not going to the bathroom, then you have a drainage pathway that's blocked up. The next big one is going to be like the liver in the liver bile ducts. Huge part of drainage in drainage support. Your lymphatic system. So think about like your lymph nodes on your body. We have these all over, like under our armpits, kind of behind our ears, under our, or kind of like near our knees. All of those are also drainage pathways. And there's also something called the glymphatic system, which is basically the way that your brain drains into your lymphatic system. And then we have our kidneys, of course, which we excrete toxins through urine. And then we also have our skin, which we excrete toxins through sweating, sometimes breakouts. It's kind of different for everyone. But that is like when we say or reference the drainage funnel, that is what we're talking about. Those are all the moving pieces that are a part of the drainage funnel. And then, of course, I did say like the colon and bowel movements, that's a big thing. I just want to make sure I covered how these actually drain. Yeah, we talked about the lymphatics, the urine, excreting urine, and then sweating through the skin. Anything else you want to add on to that before we go deeper into it?
I know I'm like battling of like, I have so many I already wrote like 6 notes. I think let's leave it right there for right now. And then I say just, of course, there's one other thing I just want to add. There's also, just because this comes up when I talk to a lot of people, is there's also some lymph nodes around your groin area. And a lot of times, if you have a lot of like swollenness, puffiness, in those, especially, I hear this from women more often than men. I also talk to more women than men, full disclosure. So, and they reference that tenderness, and then I'll often ask them about other areas where they may be feeling kind of swollen, puffy, tender. And a lot of times they're like, oh, it's my cortisol. Maybe cortisol is playing a role here. And I also think there's a bigger thing going on here when it comes to the lymphatic system. And then let's look at the drainage funnel overall, kind of going into that. So I'd say that's the only thing I'll reference for right now before we dive in deeper. So so that's a good overview of just drainage in general. And then we're going to dive deeper into all of these here. So really just super broad spectrum. Drainage, liver detox pathways, these pathways are a way to get things out of the body that shouldn't be there. Just the most basic explanation of this is our body's natural systems to get things out of our body that maybe we have too much of things, maybe we things that just shouldn't be in our body. A really good example is if we have excess estrogen or excess testosterone, like something like PCOS. Well, the body has systems to get these things out. We're all exposed to toxins, which is fun. Our body has natural systems to get this stuff out of our body, except when they're not in a great place. and it can't keep up in getting these things out for a variety of reasons, which we'll obviously get into today. But then we run into other issues. And this is where kind of, maybe it started with just a little bit of a dysfunction in the body, and then it compounded and got bigger and bigger. And then all kinds of systems ended up a little haywire.
Yeah. And that's where this bucket reference that we've talked about before, like when this is how things start to build up in your body, because we have this natural process that is supposed to clear and take these toxins out and take the buildup out so our bodies can keep functioning naturally. And it's when we get that buildup, then things stop working the way they should. Maybe we start getting constipated and we stop going to the bathroom. Then this is how toxins continue to build up in our body, and even, which we'll go deeper into this, but can even get into your bloodstream, which is like really a huge issue, then something that you absolutely want to try and avoid. But we'll get deeper into that in a second here.
Yeah. So symptoms. From a symptom perspective, let's go over common symptoms of, hey, if you have a few of these, as with always, some of these will overlap with a variety of things. So it's not if you have one of these, although there are a few that I would say if you have this one, you probably have liver detox pathway dysfunction or some sort of drainage dysfunction going on. But by and large, if you have a few of these, it is worthwhile to take a deeper look into drainage pathways. We will chat a little bit about some blood work markers here too that are good indications of some things going on. But let's talk symptoms here first.
Yeah. So main number one thing, if you are constipated, you have drainage issue problems, because if you're not going to the bathroom, then things are staying in your system. So that is the biggest one. Or feeling like, and when we say constipated too, if you're not going at least once a day, that is constipation. It's better if you're going to the bathroom one or two times a day, even 3 times a day. That's like ideal, but not everyone's body does that. But you at least have to be going 1 time a day. And if you're not, that is considered constipation. Or if you're feeling that you don't have complete bowel movements, like not everything is emptying, that can be another sign that your drainage pathways need a little bit of support. Oh, go ahead.
But I don't want you to move on. I just want to stick with the constipation here. So I don't know if you were going to move on or not. I want to talk more about constipation. Yeah. So constipation is one of the ones that if you are constipated, and I was constipated for essentially my entire life. And if you are constipated, this is one of those symptoms that if you've been constipated for a while, and I'm not talking like you're traveling for a week and you get a little constipated, like that is normal for a lot of people, especially while traveling. But if this is a consistent thing for you where you are getting constipated on a regular basis, you have liver detox pathway dysfunction, hands down, because your body, as the stool is sitting in your body, things are reabsorbed. Water is one of the things that's reabsorbed. So this is why if you have like loose stools, diarrhea, you can get really dehydrated because your body, you're in your large intestine and your colon, that's where a lot of your water is reabsorbed. And this is where a lot of things are reabsorbed. Maybe some things that we don't want to be reabsorbed. And so this is part of the problem. So this is a massive, massive one. And let's just talk bowel movements here. Gonna get a little graphic here. So a good bowel movement, you should feel empty afterwards. It should take you a few minutes. You shouldn't be on the toilet for 15, 20, 30 plus minutes. I mean, unless you're like dilly-dallying on your phone. I'm talking like actual, because that's the thing. I know if you're a parent and that is your alone time to be on your phone, I mean, different story here. But by and large, the actual movement should only take you a handful of minutes. It shouldn't be painful. It should feel normal. It should be, if we look at the Bristol stool chart, like it should be longer, thin-ish, shouldn't be little tiny little rabbit pellets, shouldn't be like super loose, shouldn't just like you shouldn't eat and then just like have a bowel movement. That is not normal. Yeah, so those are all things that are really important, and it should be at least once a day. At
Yeah.
least once a day. Also, you should not have to stimulate a bowel movement with caffeine. That is not normal. You should just be able to naturally have a bowel movement. And look, there's a lot of things that impact our ability to have a bowel movement. And, I think that's things for other episodes. But if you are going less than once a day, full, complete bowel movement, you are constipated, and we need to dive deeper here into liver detox pathways.
Yeah. And realistically, for most people that we work with, I won't say all of them, because constipation, or we can say diarrhea, not everyone has an issue with this, but a handful of the people that we work with, this seems to always be an issue. And like Megan said, I also experienced this. I used to not go for like 6 and 7 days. And I worked with practitioners who put me on different protocols, and first of all, that's why nothing ever worked, is because I wasn't having bowel movements. So you can't heal when you're not getting the toxins out of your body. There's a lot to that. But and I did want to add when we say an ideal bowel movement, like the perfect bowel movement on the Bristol stool chart looks like a banana. It's like that is the perfect bowel movement to have. So if you're having that, great. If you're not, and it's like loose stools, especially running to the bathroom right after you eat, also an issue that you need some support in that area.
Yeah.
Anything else on bowel movements?
I think that's good for right now.
Okay.
I'll probably want to come back to them, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure we're going to talk about it again. So general or chronic fatigue. And again, hear us out. We know that this is very mixed in with a lot of other things that we talk about as well. But general or chronic fatigue, that's a big one. Mood problems, anxiety, depression, another big thing, or just like brain fog, feeling like you're not clear, you can't think right. That's a really great sign that like that glymphatic system that we mentioned, that system is not draining properly.
I'll also say like cognition, recall is another really big one. I've talked to so many women who, especially like the perimenopause kind of starts to hit in, and all of a sudden they're like, I am not smart anymore. I used to be a smart person. I used to be really sharp, just concentration and focus and being able to, recall words and events and all these things. And all of a sudden it's just like, that's all gone. And part of that, I won't say all of it, but a good part of that goes back to liver detox pathway support.
Yeah.
Or lack thereof.
And it's really crazy too, after you have done this and you have supported these pathways and you do start to feel like clear again, maybe in a way that you didn't even know was possible, you'll know instantly when you're feeling out of whack. You're going to know instantly like, oh, my body is off, like it needs some extra support. It's pretty amazing once you give this area some support, how you can feel. So cognition stuff, huge thing. Chronic inflammation and swelling, or I don't want to say the clinical term because I don't know if we're necessarily allowed to do that, but like swelling or any like pitting in the legs, another huge sign that things are not draining out the way they should.
I will say puffiness and water retention
yes,
are probably some good adjectives to use here, especially we'll often see this in the extremities. This can definitely be other places too, and we'll get into like the cortisol and the round moon face. This is part of it. It's just like the puffiness and you end up with a round face. But this can also, especially in the feet, in the legs, in the hands, even if it's a heat thing, ooh, is it a heat thing? Is it really just these drainage pathways not being properly supported that is exacerbated during heat?
Yeah.
Likely.
Yeah. Yeah, the swelling thing is huge. Skin problems, I mentioned acne in the beginning. If you have like chronic acne, not just like hormonal acne that pops up every month, another big red flag that your drainage pathways need some support. But rashes, hives, eczema, those are some other big things too that can show that your body needs some support. Yellowing skin on the face. And this is something that, and I will say this term. So I actually had jaundice when I was young. And I didn't find out until I was older when I started doing research on it that has something to do with like your liver and whatnot. So I always thought that was pretty interesting. But yeah, yellow skin on your face, another sign. And this is not something that we see very often. I will also add that in.
And if you start to turn yellow, your eyes or your face, like please go see a physician immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that usually at that point, things are, I don't want to say shutting down, but you will need some stronger support than just what we're talking about. Yeah. Not being able to clear infections. That's such a big one. If go ahead. If you've tried multiple things to clear infections up, like candida, just any yeast work, bacterial stuff, and not had any luck, this is a huge piece here, which is why we're talking about this all the time. Like, always do this work, even if you just wanted to do, like, if you're a person who generally feels fine and was just interested in doing like 5 days of like parasite work around the full moon, we are always going to say you need to do at least a month of drainage support beforehand to make absolute sure that everything can come out of your body. Because if not, that's how you stir things up. That's how infections can repeatedly come back. So this is another really big red flag here.
This also goes to chronic viral infections. If you have chronic EBV, if you have Lyme, if you have some of these other chronic viral issues, look, like the liver, and we'll get into the liver specifically here, but the liver is playing a big role in trying to get things out of the body, and that includes viruses. And so chronic viral issues play a huge role in liver and drainage and detox pathways. And so if you've done a lot of support, and I'll say especially with Epstein-Barr virus, especially with Lyme, and you haven't had success, if you're still having flares, if you're still having issues with it, this is a big thing to look at.
Yeah. Yeah. Super important. And just with any infection too, like we shouldn't be having, chronic UTIs or, these things are not meant to reoccur frequently in our body. If that's happening, then there's something that's being missed, and it's most likely this area. Sore or swollen breast tissue. And that kind of goes back to what you were saying about, I am blanking on the word right now. Estrogen. That's what you had mentioned earlier. So yeah, processing hormones. Our liver does a lot of processing hormones. When there's a buildup, it can show in our body in different ways. One of those ways can be sore or swollen breasts. That's a really big thing.
Yeah, and I can't tell you the number of women who have come to us, be like, my breast gets so tender, like painful to the touch, leading up, sometimes like several weeks leading up to the start of your period, sometimes just a few days. This is not normal. This is a sign your body is not processing out estrogen properly. This is 100% what this means. Like this was one of those things where it literally doesn't mean anything else. This is what it means. And doing detox pathway support, especially, I mean, I would say all of the time, for a period of time, but doing like going hard, especially a couple weeks before your period, and we'll get into techniques and how to do this, supplements and just lifestyle things. Man, is this such an easy and simple game changer for so many women that we work with who experience this. I mean, one of the first things they'll say is, leading up to my period, like maybe still some PMS, like maybe still some acne stuff, but the breast tenderness completely went away. And it really is that simple for that piece of the puzzle. Now, the bigger question is, well, why is that happening? What else is impacting the body? But this is a pretty easy win that you can get to just with some support.
Yeah. That is definitely a direct correlation there for that one.
Yeah.
Just going down the list here. So heart palpitations or irregular heartbeat can be a thing that can also tie into some other things as well. Sensitivities to lights, sounds, EMFs, or electronics, whatever you want to say, that can also be a sign that you need some support here.
And supplements and medications. If you,
Yes.
once again, like we get a lot of people that like, I'm really sensitive to medications. I only need like a quarter dose of what most people need, or even like supplements you've tried. Just you're so sensitive and you have a reaction pretty quickly. It's often because you haven't done the prep work to support these liver detox pathways. Once again, going back to the liver here. So, and we are mildly obsessed with the liver just because it does so much for us. But the liver processes many, many things, including supplements and medications. And so if you are noticing that you are particularly sensitive to supplements and medications, we got to look at the liver, because why your liver's processing that, and why is your liver so sensitive? Why is your body reacting this way? First step is to look at the liver and these detox pathways.
Yeah, that's a big one. And just to throw this in there too, again, everyone's body is different. There are certain people who have to move way slower in this area, like especially people who are really sensitive to supplements and medications and whatnot. I mean, this isn't something that, you know your body, if you're sensitive to these things. If this is something you're interested in doing, just like heads up, you might have to go really slow. Not everyone can just dive in and do this. Morning stiffness is another one. Cellulite, or it's on our sheet, it says flabby skin, and I don't really love that. So we'll say like loose skin, cellulite. That can be a sign that just things aren't flowing the way that they should be.
This is another really common one, especially if you carry most of your weight. And I say this as someone who is shaped like, I am by nature hourglass shaped. Like before I started strength training, like teeny tiny upper body, and then, and a smaller waist, and then real big hips, thighs, a booty. And that's my natural shape. I'm naturally shaped like a pear. I've changed that a little bit with strength training. But one of the things I noticed was I started getting a lot of cellulite in the back of my legs and in my glutes when I started to get really sick, and when I started to be like chronically ill. And it was different than just gaining fat. Like it was just, it looked different. It wasn't quite the same. And even when I lost weight, I would still have issues with it. And it's like, I would lose body fat and I would lose weight in those areas, but I'd still have the cellulite. And I'd say, not that I have zero cellulite now, because that is not the case, but it looks totally different now. And it's not like the big, like bubble. I don't know.
It's almost like pits. It's almost like pitted.
Yeah. And it's not like, it's just like mild, and you can tell the skin's not super even. And then we're not here to body shame. Cellulite is fine. Well, almost all of us, women especially, have it.
It is.
Totally normal. But this bigger, chunkier, I don't like the word chunky. These like bigger pitted. I don't know what words I want to use right now. These like bigger divots, like really large divots, can definitely be a sign of estrogen dominance. And when I got off birth control, when I started really diving into like liver detox pathway support and heavy metal support, and then my hormones just naturally balanced out, that went away without me doing a darn thing.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I also experienced that. I for sure still have some, because again, it is very, very natural and normal to have cellulite, but what we're talking about is slightly intensified. And if you're someone who has it, I mean, even if you look up pictures on the internet, maybe relate it to like drainage or something, I don't know, maybe you could see the difference, but there is a slight difference here. Having cellulite is a very normal thing. In kind of, again, with skin stuff, varicose veins or spider veins. So if you have the very visible, like blue, purple veins on your legs. I don't know if everyone knows what spider veins are, but that is another sign directly related to the liver that your liver could need some support in that area.
Also, just to say, because this just always comes up here, genetics.
Well, I was just about to say,
Okay.
I have this and I have done tons of drainage support and I saw slight changes, but I mean, if I look at like my mom or any other of my family members, like we all have this. So genetics does play a role here. I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah. And this is one of those things where it's, if you just have this and no other symptoms, genetics can definitely play a role. But I also don't want to say just because it runs, quote unquote, runs in your family, that also doesn't mean you don't have liver detox pathway dysfunction. We can't blame genetics on everything. Yes, genetics play a role. And so do things that we pick up as children and as adults from our family, lifestyle, eating habits, emotional or lack of emotional processing. All of these things we can pick up, and we know we can turn genetics on and off. It's called epigenetics. Very well researched here. This is why you can sometimes put autoimmunity issues into remission, and some of these other things we can turn these on and off. We'll need to do another episode on MTFR gene mutations. I have a lot of feelings on that that are not the norm, we'll say. And it's because you can turn genes on and off. And so the question is, well, why? But this is also not to discount that genes don't play an issue or play a role at all.
Yeah. And this is again why we would never, if you're coming to us just for an example here, and you were like, my main thing is like varicose veins or spider veins, and that's what I want to work on. If that's the only thing that you're presenting with, then we're not going to jump to conclusions and be like, oh, it's just this one thing. Like if someone's coming in who needs drainage support, there is a handful of signs, symptoms, stuff that we'll see in blood work. It's not just one thing like that. So again, always looking at the big picture, always looking at a little bit of testing here. We're never just focusing on one thing that you're dealing with. The other big one, just to wrap this up here, kidney problems. Kidneys are a part of the drainage funnel. So if you have kidney issues, there's a good chance that you need some drainage support. Same with, breathing or lung issues. That's another big one. And these two big ones here, if you don't sweat, that's a problem. You need to sweat. That means that you probably need some support in that area. And then same with puffy eyes as well. That's another big issue there.
I'll say, so the puffy eyes, so it's like dark puffy circle, and like some of the darker circles, like once again, some genetics can play a tiny role in the dark circles under the eyes, but by and large, if you've got like real puffy dark circles under your eyes, chances are you've got some liver detox pathway dysfunction. The other one I'm going to throw in here that I don't think was on that list was motion sickness. If you get like motion sickness in cars, airplanes, like other places, that is almost always a liver detox pathway dysfunction. And I've seen this completely reversed where people would have to be very mindful of, car rides and position in car rides and length of car rides, where we no longer have any issues once we do proper support of their body.
Yeah, that is a great one to add in too, and one that probably many people will resonate with as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So that's a pretty comprehensive list of symptoms here. So, looking at this, if we look at blood work, just a couple big markers that we'll really look at. And there are quite a few. I'll say most of them are going to be on your metabolic panel, complete metabolic panel. And this should be a standard panel that is run by your physician every year. This is like glucose and BUN and creatinine and a whole host of other ones. And some big ones I'm going to start with liver markers here. So big liver markers that we'll often look at: AST, ALT. Our range for both of those is 10 to 20. And if something's 20 or above, even in the higher end, if both of them are a little bit in the higher range, we're going to start asking some questions and looking a little bit deeper here. Same thing with bilirubin. This is one of I would say if there was one marker that is almost out of range for everyone that comes to us, and once again, we're not seeing people who are crazy healthy at this point, but it's probably bilirubin. And bilirubin, it's almost always low. I've seen it a handful of times on the higher end, but so 0.5 is our low end range. 0.2, 0.3, I mean, most of the time, that is what people are coming to us with. And that can indicate a bile flow issue, which we'll get into bile flow here, but this is produced in the liver, stored in the gallbladder. If you don't have a gallbladder, that's a whole other thing, meaning you can't store bile. So we can get into that later. But those are really big ones. Alkaline phosphatase is another one. If it's 90 or above, we're going to start asking some questions. And then another really, we'll say, set of labs that we'll be looking at is cholesterol. If your cholesterol, and we dug into this one of the last couple episodes here, but if your cholesterol is wonky, trending high, trending low, or just wonky overall, we're going to start asking some questions. Same thing, blood sugar. Blood sugar is largely controlled in the liver, not 100%, but a lot of it's controlled in the liver. And so if blood sugar is really dysregulated, we're going to start asking some questions here about the liver and what's going on with liver detox pathways.
Yeah. And the gallbladder thing is huge. And I just so people know, because this is a really not missed thing that's not talked about enough. If you don't have a gallbladder and you are running to the bathroom after every single meal, and you might want to pay attention to that and put 2 and 2 together, that, we really need our gallbladder. And there are things that you can take to kind of replace the function of your gallbladder. And almost, I would say like 99% of the time when we add this supplement in, it's called Beta Plus, it will flip that. Like, you will start to have normal bowel movements again. That's just such a huge piece of this here. So just because you brought that up, I wanted to touch on it, and maybe we'll put that in the show notes too. And you can see it on your full script also. It's under gallbladder support.
Yeah. And it's ox bile is like generally what you want. There are a variety of forms out there. I think there are overpriced formulations. I won't name any names, but I think there are overpriced formulations out there. I think Biotics is a really good company overall. We have no affiliation other than they're on full script, and we happen to recommend them sometimes to clients. And we really do like this particular supplement. And it's also quite affordable, because this is something you're going to have to be on forever if you don't have a gallbladder, because you don't have a place to store bile. And one of the functions of bile is to break down fat in your body, for reference, which means that things just kind of run through. You can also have constipation as a result of that too. If your bile function is not great, you can also end up with constipation issues and toxin overload issues. And we'll get into that piece later, because bile is super important and also quite complicated.
Yeah, it is very complicated. Do you want to go into, we can go a couple different ways here. Maybe just a little side note on the difference between, a detox and a cleanse. Do you want to dive into that?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. So when we talk about detoxing, which again will always be happening after we support drainage pathways. So when we're cleansing, what that means typically, like when someone comes to us and they're like, I'm doing a juice cleanse. You're not truly detoxing the body from doing a juice cleanse. A juice cleanse is more along the lines of like maybe cleaning out your colon and getting, clearing some things out that maybe were like stuck on the lining of the intestines, or if you felt like, you just needed to really clear yourself out, like that's more of a juice cleanse. A detox is, killing, binding toxins in releasing them from your body. Something like a juice cleanse isn't going to do that. And then kind of same thing with like colonics too. And Megan, I know you have a strong standpoint on this. It's the same thing where, you're not going in and this isn't giving your liver any support. This isn't giving your kidneys any support. All it's doing is making your body release and go to the bathroom, which isn't a bad thing. That is important. but it's most likely not going to fix constipation issues. Or if you lean the other way, if you have loose stools, again, like that's not going to fix it because you're not targeting these liver pathways. So there's a slight difference here when we talk about these things.
Yeah, and when we talk about when we do, and we'll get into a specific protocol here because we do have one readily available, and then we'll also get into the one that we actually use in our practice most often. But we're not doing cleanses. What we're doing is we're looking at how the body naturally is supposed to work and getting these things out of our body that shouldn't be here. So these liver detox pathways, how do we support that process? And we look at, and not to get too technical because I don't want to do that, but there are different phases of detoxification that our body goes through. There's three main phases that our body goes through. Phase 1, phase 2 are arguably, if we had to pick, two of the phases that are most important. Those are probably it, with phase 2 probably taking rank here. And so what we do in our practice and what these more, I don't really want to use the word clinical, but more scientifically based detoxes look to do is support these phases of detoxification. And how do we support the body in doing that to actually get these things out of our body versus just let's just clean out our body, which is where colonics can come in. Enemas can come in. Coffee enemas are an exception here. We'll talk about that later, but I'm talking water enemas. And with the colonics, look, I've done several colonics. Once again, I have a long history of constipation and they were recommended to me. I do think they have some value. I also think the vast majority of colonic therapists, which I apologize if that's not the correct name, but I'm pretty sure that is colon therapists. I'm pretty sure that's their technical name. Don't quite understand all of these, how the body naturally does this. And yes, the colon's really important in cleaning out the body, cleaning out the colon, which is really all it's doing, is there is value in that for sure, but you're not fixing the root of the problem. And doing that on a super regular basis can have negative side effects. It's also not going to kill anything. It's not going to fix your IBS. It's not going to, if you've got a parasite issue, it's not going to fix your parasite issue. So it's just really important to understand that. There's also a couple different types of colonics that if you are going to do a colonic, I have a strong suggestion here. So there are ones where you just go in, you insert the tools yourself, and it's a continuous flush, and you are left alone during this continuous flush. And I had many years of experience with coffee enemas, experience with the other type of colonics that I'm going to share in just a minute. And this was a lot for me. And I mean, it was a lot. It was aggressive. I felt very alone during the whole process. I didn't feel like I had enough support. I didn't feel like I was being cleared out like I wanted to be cleared out. And I just would not recommend it. So if you're going to get a colonic, make sure the colonic therapist stays in the room with you. And the way that this really should work is they should stay in the room. They should be controlling the machine and controlling how much water goes in and then when it's released. They can also help with manual massage of your abdomen, especially if you have a lot of GI issues, if you have a lot of constipation issues. There's so much value because the likelihood that you're actually going to empty all this out is slim to none, and you can end up more bloated and more uncomfortable afterwards. So they can help with manual massage. They can also continue to go a little bit higher into your large intestine as you feel more comfortable with this. And especially for me, once again, even with my first colonic, I had a lot of experience with coffee enemas going into it. So she was like, yeah, I feel like I can go pretty high. And it felt totally fine for me. I mean, it's not the most comfortable thing, but generally speaking, totally fine and so much more comfortable. And the only time I really use colonics and the way I would recommend using colonics by and large is after you've done a lot of killing work, particularly with parasites. Yeah, I do see some value in just, hey, let's do just a final flush out just to make sure all of it's out. And I'm talking if you saw lots of parasites come out of your body and you did parasite work for an extended period of time, there can be some value. Not that I think it's necessary, but there can be some value in it. And that's the only time I use colonics now, or would recommend it to someone. So just a little FYI on that.
Yeah, no, and I am really glad that we explained that because, and just like a little piece to add on to the end of this here is it's another tool that can be helpful to get everything out, especially if you are not someone who feels comfortable with doing like a coffee enema at home. You would rather have someone like administrate it and walk you through it. I think that's a really great option to have. But bottom line, like tying this back into drainage is just going to do that alone is not supporting your drainage pathways so they can function on their own again, if that makes sense. So like we need that extra piece of doing this additional work, with end goal being that your body's going to be able to do it on its own again. And of course we can go do stuff like this, you know, maybe a couple times a year if you're doing a full moon challenge, great, that's awesome. But the end goal is our body's supposed to do this naturally on its own, and that's the part that we want to support, so you don't need to take supplements every single day for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and just to note too, so because I have a feeling this will come up, they can do coffee in colonics. Here's the thing though. So it doesn't work the same. When we do a coffee enema, we administer the coffee enema inside of our bodies and then we roll onto the right side of your body so that the coffee is actually stimulating the liver and we're trying to hold that. If it's just being flushed through your body or you're not rolling onto your right side, you do not get the same impact. So just to be really clear, yes, it's fine if you add coffee into your colonic. However, it is not nowhere close to the same as doing a coffee enema.
Yeah, it has to be done a very, specific way, like Megan had mentioned, laying on your side. In the coffee portion of that, the whole point of it is that it stimulates the glutathione production in the liver, and that's where what makes it the liver supporting activity per se.
Yeah, and it also can clear bile ducts. It can, I still will occasionally, after I've done parasite work, like see a bunch of liver flukes come out, just help stimulate bioproduction, clear out those bile ducts along with the glutathione. So it's totally, totally different. And it's actually not for your colon at all. Coffee enemas are for your liver more than anything else.
Yeah, so there is quite a big difference there. But again, it's a good tool or good option to have if you're someone who doesn't feel comfortable doing it at home. Mm-hmm. You always have that option.
Yeah, and so when we do, juice cleanses, not going to do this. Now, I also want, and I will not name names here, but I will describe in great detail some of these protocols here. So there are a variety of people, companies that are in the functional medicine space who have their own detox boxes. And that doesn't narrow it down enough. But these boxes that you can get, that detox pathway support, liver detox, drainage support, whatever you want to call it. Please keep in mind when you do these. So you need several things. And we'll get into our protocol. And not that I think our protocol is the best protocol. There is a lot of science behind it. I don't think it's the only protocol out there. But I want to, usually there's a supplement for the liver. Usually there's a binder, maybe something to support phase 2 detox pathways. But a lot of these protocols will also recommend pretty extreme fasting. And fasting by itself has value for some people and also can be extremely detrimental for a lot of other people. And if you have liver detox pathway dysfunction, especially pretty significant dysfunction, if you have a lot of gut issues, a lot of cortisol issues, if you're not sleeping, if stress management is not super under control, fasting can have very negative side effects, particularly for women. And there's one in particular, once again, I'm not going to name names, but they recommend several days of fasting right off the bat. They also have their own shake, which is a quote unquote multivitamin. Please look at your multivitamin. If it includes iron in it, please do not take it unless you've had someone really look at your iron levels. That does not include ferritin by itself is not enough. Serum iron, not enough. It needs to be TIBC, iron saturation at the very, very least to be looking at this, because you can, once again, experience this, had personal experience with this issue and this particular company and people that are trained in this way program will say just people end up with iron oversaturation, and it's really significant. It can be a really big issue. I'm still dealing with it years later. I just ran some lab work and I got really angry and upset when I got my blood work back with this piece in particular. They're doing well, and that's fine. But I have a really big problem with this whole fasting, only drinking shakes. This isn't a great modality by and large for the average person, especially, I mean, when I went into this, and once again, I was working with a practitioner when I did this. I went from like having terrible metabolic health, like terrible blood sugar regulation. I mean, I'd get hangry and dizzy, and I was put on a 2-day fast, which is such, I mean, I made it 36 hours, which was terrible for my body. And then I continued to not be able to eat breakfast for 2 weeks because I had these shakes and they were like, oh, add fruit, it'll be fine. And I was starving and starving myself, and my body ended up in a really bad spot. And so just please be mindful if you're doing one of these kits for detox pathway support, for drainage support, really, excuse me, just lost my voice there for a minute. Really just be mindful of the nutrition piece and the fasting piece. And if they are recommending, shakes as meal replacements, that's a huge red flag in my opinion. Fasting for an extended period of time, huge red flag in my opinion, because stress also plays a huge role in our liver detox pathways. And if we're increasing stress in the body, this is not going to be super helpful for this whole process.
Yeah, I mean, Megan pretty much summed that up. Besides the fact that the majority of the population has blood sugar regulation issues, and you should not be jumping in and doing any type of fasting if you have blood sugar regulation issues. And yes, I understand that this is something we hear a lot. People will come to us and they'll say, well, I feel better when I don't eat because my stomach issues go away. That's different. That's a different thing. That means that there's GI stuff going on that you have to work on. It's the fasting thing. We know, again, like very touchy subject. There's people who are all for this. But to be just fully honest here, like every single client that we work with, a lot of them have tried fasting and we go the opposite direction. And that's how we get them to feel better, amongst many other things. But yeah, fasting is not a cleanse. Even I wouldn't even call fasting a cleanse. Like, I don't know why people say that, because you're not clearing anything out. In fact, it could do quite the opposite to make things worse. But yeah, so we just had to talk about fasting and throw that in there and kind of talk about the difference of like what a colon cleanse is, or, a juice cleanse, in comparison to actually focusing on opening up your liver detox pathways. So do you want to get into how we can do this naturally with not even supplements?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So a really big thing is castor oil packs. So specifically using it over your liver is a great way to support your liver, which is a major detox pathway. But you want to start really slow when you do this. So a lot of people will get it, and I think it says on most packages, like, wear it overnight, because that's the easiest thing to do. This can be too much on your body. You can wake up the next day and you might notice that you feel uncomfortable, maybe puffy in the face, puffy under the eyes, maybe some skin rashes, some constipation, some diarrhea. Those are all signs that it was too much for your body. So it's really important to start slow with that. We normally recommend 15 minutes. If you're a person who is extremely sensitive to supplements, I might even say start with 5 to 10 minutes and see how it goes. And then the brand that we like for this is Queen of Thrones, just because it seems to be like the easiest one to wear overnight. And I believe you have that linked in your page, Megan.
Yeah, we do have an affiliate link. I was also affiliated with them long before I had an affiliate link. Most of the companies that we work with, I worked with long before I actually started advertising underneath them, and or I spend minimum 3 months using their products before I would recommend any of them. So Queen of the Thrones, it's easy. And here's why it's easy. So if you're going to do a castor oil pack by yourself, which you can absolutely do a homemade one, you would put some castor oil over your liver, and then you want to put like a cloth over it, and then you need to put heat over it. And so you're a little limited because you have to lay with a heating pad on you. And no one wants to do that overnight. No one wants to do that for an extended period of time. I mean, maybe you do. Maybe you like to just lay around and with a heating pad on your liver, like cool, if that's your jam, like 100% go for it. But the reason why these pre-made packs, a high quality pre-made pack is really valuable. And for me, I want ease. So these pre-made packs are self-insulated. So they self-generate heat, meaning you don't have to have the heating pad. So all you have to do is with, like the Queen of the Thrones one, you put 1 tablespoon of the castor oil in the middle, just like fold it up, rub it in a little bit, tie it around your liver, and you're good. I don't like to wear mine overnight. It messes with my sleep a little bit. I get uncomfortable. So I'll just put it on, in the morning or afternoon and wear it all day while I'm on calls, which is super easy for me. You can absolutely wear it overnight. The reason why they recommend overnight is because that's where the research is. The research shows that consistent overnight use has the most amount of benefit. Once again, that is too much for most people. I don't think you have to wear it overnight. I'll tell you, I mean, I still can tell on days that I've worn a castor oil pack, like sometimes my sleep, if I have been under a lot of stress and my sleep has been a little iffy for a few days, I'll throw on a castor oil pack one afternoon for a couple hours, and man, I sleep so good. Same thing if I am stressed and I maybe get a little constipated or something, throw on a castor oil pack, good to go. Regular bowel movements come right back. So huge fan of the castor oil packs. Yeah. We do, even with hormonal imbalances, we do recommend them over the liver. However, if you are having a lot of period pain, period cramping, you can put them on your lower belly for some relief. However, I would still by and large recommend over your liver. You can also wear them over your thyroid if you're having thyroid dysfunction issues. You can wear them over your thyroid. They also, I think, have an eye one. So once again, if you have a lot of that puffiness, but please be aware that we still recommend the liver, because we're looking at bigger problems here. Thyroid symptom, the puffiness symptom, hormone imbalances, period cramps symptom. The liver plays a really big role in the self-regulation of all of those things. So supporting those is going to be our priority.
Yeah. And they also have a couple cool, there's many other brands out there. We just like this one because of the heat technology and not having to use a heating pad with it. But another product of theirs is the hair wrap. If you're someone who is like losing your hair, either from like stress, again, there's going to be a larger underlying issue there, but the hair wrap one can be very beneficial in that area. And of course you can go look other places. There is one other brand as far as quality that I really like, and it's a Heritage brand. And you can actually buy the organic cotton like cloth. If you did want to do a homemade one, that would be the brand that I would recommend buying from, because I know that they have decent quality products. The other things that we use a lot with our clients and ourselves are Epsom salt baths. And again, this is one that you don't want to sit in the bath for like an hour. We usually recommend like 15 to 20 minutes. Start with like a half a cup, maybe even a quarter cup if you're a really sensitive person, of Epsom salt, and then you can kind of play around and work your way up. This is another really great way to support some of those drainage pathways.
I'm a huge bath person.
Me too.
Especially during the winter time, I mean, like 3-4 times a week at the end of the day. And we usually tell clients you can go up to 8 cups. I mean, I'm a 7 or 8 cups person it in there. I'll put some apple cider vinegar in there. I mean, I'll get it really hot, so I'm sweating in the bath, and then I'm like fully relaxing, do meditation work, do breath work. Baths are amazing. Now, if you have histamine issues, if you have mast cell issues, you probably might have some heat sensitivity issues. So a bath and or sauna, which we'll talk about too, may not be the best options for you, just as a forewarning.
Yeah. And if you are that person and did want to take a bath, just don't make it super hot. Like Megan was saying, you kind of have to work up to that, maybe get past a couple things, but like a warm bath, not lukewarm, but warm, not scorching hot, you may be okay with that as well.
Yeah. Also, just thought of one other thing.
Yeah.
It's also a great way to get magnesium because
yes.
the Epsom salt is a form of magnesium, and you will absorb it through your skin. So it can be very relaxing, can help you sleep, can help with stress. So there are a lot of other benefits to baths as well.
Yeah. Yeah. There's tons of benefits to bath, and it's just relaxing. It's a nice self-care gesture. But I would say the two other big things that we use are coffee enemas. And again, we kind of talked about already why a coffee enema is good for the liver. And then dry brushing is something that's very simple. And when we work with our clients, we have specific directions that we give them on this, but you can easily just, search online, what's the proper way to dry brush. And you just want to make sure you're hitting all, like if you're going over all of your lymph nodes. We do recommend doing it on your stomach as well, behind the legs, on the sides. Again, you can look up, and there's tons of different ways to do it, but that is another great way to support drainage pathways.
Two things.
Yeah.
So with the dry brushing, you should always brush towards your heart, because that's how you're going to get these things out of your body. And with the coffee enemas, amazing, amazing. And we also know they're a little aggressive for a lot of people, and that is totally fine. Coffee enemas are something that I've kept in my routine almost every week consistently I don't even know how many years I've been doing them now, but it's a huge thing in my life that it's amazing. I love a coffee enema. No, it's not the most comfortable thing, but yes, the benefits afterwards are absolutely there. And one other big thing with coffee enemas, two other things. Coffee quality, super important. And I know they have like pre-made kits. I do not like these pre-made kits. I've looked at some of them. I like doing it yourself. I know it's more complicated, but it's worth it in my opinion if you're going to do a coffee enema, because this thing is going inside your body. Make sure the temperature is appropriate for you. It shouldn't be too hot or too cold. If you get cramping, it was too cold. Just that's an easy one that happens to a lot of people. If you can't hold it for very long, that's okay. You can do a water enema first. Also, do not do it more than once a week. Do not do it more than once a week. It does strip minerals. There are a lot of benefits to it, and you can lose minerals while doing it. And so if you're doing it like every day, a few times a week, it is too much for your body and can actually be detrimental for your body.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that you said that, because that again is one of the things, like earlier in my journey when I was struggling with constipation. I mean, at a point I had someone who was telling me to do them like 3 times a week. They did not mention that you should only be doing them after you have a morning bowel movement. You're not doing this to stimulate a bowel movement. That's a really big piece of that. And because if you're going that route or hearing that from someone, it can make things worse, and it can make you feel really awful. And once you get in the routine of doing it, it's really easy to do. And it's also something, like, I know you said you do them every week. It's a very bio-individual thing. Like, I actually only try and do them once a month now, or if I'm really feeling called to do it, I'll do it then. But it's a very different response for each person. So if you do start to look into that and try it, like, make sure you're paying attention to yourself and how you feel, and not just listening to the way that we say that we're doing it. Like, you got to listen to yourself and how your body wants to do it. Next on the list, which is a pretty popular thing, rebounding. And again, so rebounding it's the same thing. You're stimulating the lymph flow, which is creating the drainage and whatnot. again, something that you want to start slow with. And this can actually be like pretty tough. I know it may sound easy, just like jumping on a trampoline for like 1 to 3 minutes, but it is actually a pretty tough thing to do. You can get out of breath pretty quick. So another thing to start slow on, tons of YouTube videos out there on rebounding and how to do that as well.
You can
And if,
also just do it on the ground, by the way. You do
oh
not
yeah,
even need a trampoline. I have a mini trampoline. I got super into rebounding many years ago, but you also can just do it on the ground. If you can leave the ground, great, but also if you cannot leave the ground, just like I won't say aggressively, but getting some pressure into the heels, that is really what helps to stimulate that. And so that's a really simple thing you can do. You don't need anything else. It's totally free. Super great option.
yeah, I mean, and to add to that too, even the motion of like squatting or going up and down is really good for drainage. So if you're someone who has like bad knees and you're not trying to like jump on the hard ground, you can just do that motion of like maybe going up to your tippy toes and then trying to like squat and bring your body to the floor. It's just that motion that helps stimulate the drainage flow. I would say, lymphatic drainage massage. If you want to have something done like professionally, I mean, I've heard nothing but good things about that. I hear so many people say they just feel completely different after they have one of these massages done. That's another really great option. And those are like the big things that you can do outside of supplementation.
And
And then,
sauna.
oh
Sauna.
yeah, and the sauna. That is the last one. I will say, I feel like that is one that can be strong for some people, especially if you're someone who's having a lot of chronic like health issues, maybe some viral stuff that you're not aware of, or if you get sick after you go use the sauna, just something to go slow with. Again, like you want to go kind of slow with all of these things. Really, the dry brushing is the one that we just don't see people have like detox reactions to. But yes, the sauna is great. It helps you sweat out all the toxins and whatnot, but just be mindful, start slow with it. If you do happen to get sick after you go in the sauna, good sign you need to back off a bit and maybe do some other work.
Yeah.
Anything else that we're missing here?
I think that's it. I do want to have a deeper conversation about bile flow, the role of bile and the brain. However, I think just for the sake of time on this, I do want to talk about supplements here. So we will include that in the mold part 3 episode because it also very much applies to mold and getting things out of the brain. It does apply to more than just mold. It does apply to heavy metals. I've had a client with IHPP and any fluid, we'll say fluid buildup in general, diagnosed and with a specific disease and not general fluid buildup behind the eyes. Anything that's putting pressure on the eyes, on the ocular nerve, brain inflammation, we'll say. So and bile and brain draining the brain does a lot with this. And so we'll have that conversation in another episode, but I think it's a very worthwhile conversation. So we'll save that for then.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. So getting into supplements here. So on our FullScript account, and we'll put a link there to our FullScript account, we do have a protocol that I've put together that I feel comfortable with the average person doing. It is not the protocol we would use in our practice. The protocols we would use in our practice are largely stronger than the ones that we share publicly for good reason, because we do not feel comfortable with the average person doing these by themselves with these stronger protocols. So we do use a company called Cellcore quite a bit. We don't use them for everything, but when it comes to liver detox pathway support, when it comes to killing pathogens in the gut. The other thing we didn't talk about, mitochondrial support. Let's also talk about that in the mold episode, mitochondrial health, because I think that's an important piece of this as well. So yeah, I got really distracted there. So liver detox pathway support, binders, and gut killing gut pathogens. So we really do like Cellcore for that. Cellcore is not available to the general population or the general public. for good reason, in my opinion, because you can get pretty sick. So this is just understand that if you are looking for access to Cellcore products, please reach out to us. I've made some exceptions depending on the person, but I want to have a conversation with someone before I would want them to have access to that. So just like full disclosure about that. But we do have a protocol available. We have something for the liver called TEDCA, which once again, it'll make more sense when we talk about bile flow and draining the brain, but TEDCA is so amazing, so amazing. And I am so surprised more people don't use this, but TEDCA is amazing for the liver itself and supporting just overall liver health, bile flow, bile function, bile ducts. So, so, so valuable. There's a binder in there, and I think we have activated charcoal. Not my favorite binder. Any non-selective binder is not my favorite binder, because what that means is when you take activated charcoal or clays or zeolite and a lot of these other kind of common and standard binders, chlorella, they don't distinguish what they're binding. They bind up anything and everything, including food, medications, other supplements. It needs to be taken away from everything. We also have a product in there called MCS2, which supports phase 2 detoxification. Once again, when we, and if you want to Google all the phases of detoxification, because we're not going to go into it now, feel free. Worthwhile read, in my opinion, if you're really interested in this. But it's really good for supporting phase 2 detoxification. And then there's something to support mitochondrial health, because this can be a very exhausting process for the body. If you've got liver detox pathway dysfunction and or a variety of chronic health issues, the chances of you having energy issues, which is broad spectrum what mitochondrial dysfunction is. Mitochondria is the energy powerhouse of our cells. This can be a very exhausting process. So we do recommend this product, ActiMag, because it's a really good product to support that piece of it. No, you don't need all of it. I would say TEDCA and the charcoal are the two most important ones. Next would be MCS2, and then last would be ActiMag, but they all have a ton of value in supporting just the body before you do anything else, which is kind of the last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up.
Yeah, and real quick, so you'll probably hear us say, when we say mitochondrial function or dysfunction or cellular health, we will sometimes use those two terms like interchangeably. And what that means is just like, we need to give your cells a boost of energy to help your body and your cells do their job and function right, just to give you like a short snapshot of what that actually means.
Yeah, exactly. So why is this so important? Why do we talk about this so often, especially, on social media? We just hammered home. And here's the thing. If you are going to do basically any other work in the body, if you are doing anything for gut, if your liver detox pathways are not open and well supported, when you go to kill anything in the body, the chances of you getting sick, of things getting stuck, of toxins being released and making you not feel good goes up drastically. And the likelihood of you being able to actually clear out any of these gut infections, if your liver detox pathways aren't in a good spot, it's almost impossible. Same thing with hormones. Once again, the liver here and these detox pathways get out anything extra. So if you're doing hormone work and you haven't started with liver detox pathway support, anything else is basically useless. Like using anything for anything DIM related, anything, any of these things for PCOS. You have to give the body what it needs to naturally get these things out of the body. And if you're only doing micromanaging support, you're missing the bigger picture here. The thyroid. So T4 is converted to T3. We'll do another episode on the thyroid. So just real quick here. Sorry, sciencey. But T4 is converted to T3. 60% of that is done in the liver. If the liver is not working properly, the chances of you having good T3 markers, which impacts your body temperature, your weight, your metabolism, your hair, your skin, like so many of these things, like that's never going to be in a good spot long term. Skin issues, autoimmune issues, viral issues, like all of this stuff is never going to be in a really good spot long term. You may have short-term success unless your liver detox pathways are in a good spot. And this is one of the reasons why when we go into maintenance mode, maintaining those pathways through supplements and or lifestyle things. If you can just do lifestyle things, do that, especially after you've done bigger work. Like this is fundamental for your health.
Yeah, pretty much it's the number one thing that needs to be done, like you said, before you do any type of work. I mean, even if you're not struggling with chronic health issues, adding in a castor oil pack is only going to benefit your body. I mean, we're exposed to toxins every single day in our home, or outside of our home as well. And it's just a good way to support your natural process of functioning and detoxifying and whatnot. So yeah, it's truly something that literally everyone could benefit from.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's definitely a lot more we could get into, but I think this is a good general overview of liver detox pathway support, why this is so important, and how to start supporting these processes in our body. Anything else to add?
No, I think that's it. Hopefully this helps maybe make it a little bit clearer for the people who are listening or who have been following along for a while, just because I know we talk about this a lot. So hopefully it is that missing piece for you.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you so much for listening. Once again, we are new. Please like, subscribe, follow. If you feel called to, a 5-star review would mean the world to us. So be sure to like and follow us on all social media platforms, and we will see you next week.
Bye, everyone.